Welcome to this Throwback Friday, recorded not on a Friday, but will be shared on a Friday. And I'm here with my good friend Charles. And Charles and I mean, we worked together in the government of Canada, like what, 5 years ago, I think it was. And then you followed me over to Europe. At least that's the story I'm telling people. But instead of going to the UK, you went to France, and you've been with the OECD now for what, 3 years?
Yeah, coming up in 3 years.
Congratulations. It's a big milestone. And working on missions. And so, in fact, we recorded a video recently all about missions and what mission government means. But today, I'm excited to sort of get your thoughts on what is an article that, or an idea or concept that has really shaped your thinking. So, you had one in mind. What was the one that you had in mind?
Yeah, so I thought it would be interesting to talk about this idea that's called the housing theory of everything. And it's a blog post from Works in Progress by John Myers, Sam Bowman, and Ben Southwood. And I think it's something that really touches on many different policy issues. And so I think is a really interesting piece to highlight.
So, what would you say are the core ideas that the authors are talking about in the article, the ones that you pull away from it?
So I think the main thing is that like Western housing shortages aren't just affecting people from, oh, I don't have a place to live, but have so many other repercussions on different things. And the article goes into different areas around how it affects inequality and climate change and obesity and falling fertility rates. But the piece that I think that sparked my interest was this idea about low productivity, and then it made me also then look into the concept a little bit and how this plays out in the Canadian context, because Canada has one of the worst housing affordability rates in the world, and particularly after the COVID-19 housing boom, the housing affordability in Canada got really bad. And as a guy who cares about innovation policy, then I thought I'd look a little bit more at what does that mean, and what are some of the consequences around that.
Well, I think this for me, one of the reasons I was really excited to talk to you about this and incredibly intrigued by this article is, I mean, you kind of alluded to it already. You read a lot about innovation. I mean, you have a newsletter that you put out daily about innovation stuff that's happening around the world. And so, of all the sheer amount of stuff that you read about innovation, this article is the one that stood out for you. And I guess I'm curious as to what makes this article for you so much more like it stands out compared to all the other stuff that you've read.
Yeah, so I think that compared to other things, there's a lot of quite, I'd say, almost intuitive stuff that it kind of makes sense that around conversation about talent, or conversation around science, or conversations around university commercialization, which, all these debates that are always happening, and there's always interesting stats and interesting reports and things around technology trends and this type of stuff. But I think when there's an outside topic that then affects these things, then that spurs my curiosity more. And so when I'm looking at the housing issue, that there's a few key things that I think that it really impacts, and so I have a list of, I think, five that I think are really interesting from things I've been looking at, building off of this piece. One is that like it prevents agglomeration of highly skilled talent, and so this is so lots of theories around innovation is that it happens by having lots of smart people in a room around a water cooler, around a bar, and it doesn't necessarily happen through force, but kind of through this organic, just people being in the same room, knocking heads together. And so if you can't have all your smart people living in the places together, then it affects their ability to be innovative. Another key aspect of this is that it makes your country less attractive, both for the smartest people to move, but also for your smartest people to stay. And I'm not sure about you, but I know so many great people who've left Canada and
Yeah.
they've gone, particularly to the United States, where the housing costs are cheaper, but also they are paid way more. And so the ratio of cost of living is better. Other things though that I've looked at too in this regard is that it discourages people from being entrepreneurial and starting businesses in the first place. People are more risky if they have more debt, and so if you have a larger mortgage and more mortgage payments, then you're discouraged from starting a business, and this impacts people who are already particularly disadvantaged in this regard. In Canada, racialized Canadians are more likely to have debt, and so then and miss rent or mortgage payments, and so then potentially this impacts already disadvantaged groups from wanting to start businesses. And then the two other areas that it impacts are it drives up the overhead cost for businesses because they're competing for land with housing, and so society might be better off using the land for business, but the market doesn't think so, and then it drives it saps away investment capital from more productive areas. If banks could invest in very low risk, high return things like mortgages, then they're more likely to do so than a high risk thing like a risky startup. And so these are the five areas that I think are really key and impacted by the housing crisis.
So I guess the question I'm curious about is how is this article um, impacting your work now and the way you think about your work? And particularly, I'm thinking like missions obviously is a very um, complex and systemic kind of way of approaching things. How is this article shaping your work on that?
So right now, I'd say it's less of a direct focus. I think I would really love more people to be talking about why they should be doing a mission on housing affordability or something like this, and I think that could be a really interesting concept to explore. But it was more so in my last job with the government of Canada, where I was able to put some of these things on paper.
Mm.
And I'm not saying this was just me, but by trying to flag this as an important issue for innovation policymakers, then the issue did get onto someone's radar, and money was given to support housing innovation policy. There's this program in Canada called the Global Innovation Clusters, and they were given funding to invest in housing innovation.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, it's glad to hear that this has had an impact. It'd be fun to reach out to the authors and be like, hey, did you know this article is shaping Canadian policy now? Um, Charles, thank you so much for taking time and for sharing this article. Hopefully, others get as much influence and it shapes them their thinking the way it has with you as well. So, thank you so much for this, Charles.
Yeah, of course. It was nice to chat with you, Derek.